Okay, I think everything is ready and we are starting our session. Good evening to Kigali. My name is Nataliia. I'm a project delivery lead at Apt Associates, and for the next 1 hour and 15 minutes, I will be facilitating for you the panel, Ukrainian Women's Leadership Under Fire. Our panel is physically based in Ukraine, and it is 8:30 p.m. here right now. It's a great honor, but also a big responsibility to be a part of this panel and represent Ukraine in this conference. Before we start, I would like to ask you to write down in our chat from where are you watching us tonight. Please write your city, your country. Thank you. Also, just a quick reminder, our session is being broadcasted in several languages, so if you do not see the interpretation feature option, please refresh your browser and it should appear for you. Today we will hear stories directly from female NGO, political and academic leaders on how economic empowerment and planning for recovery is putting women at the forefront in Ukraine. And our speakers will talk about current reforms contributing to gender equality and social inclusion through research and programming, how they are building a comprehensive economic and policy response to empower women during the war. And the panel participants will share specific examples from projects supporting the government of Ukraine to protect women's businesses, embolden marginalized groups, build capacity to gender-sensitive war damage assessment, recovery, and also provide psychological support for women under the fire. A lot of activities we will be talking tonight were conducted under the Good Governance Fund program funded by UK Aid, which has been running in Ukraine since 2020. So let us see from where you are watching us tonight. Lauren, can you please show it?
So it looks like the word cloud is not currently active. We will need folks to just enter their city or their country in the word cloud. And if not in the word cloud, we can circle back, Nadia, at the end and check the chat.
Perfect. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to introduce our panelists. They are brilliant and courageous Ukrainian female leaders who are based in Kyiv, capital of Ukraine, during this outstanding period of time. And our first panelist is Repko. Maria is an accomplished female professional working as the Deputy Executive Director at the Center for Economic Strategy, one of the leading Ukrainian think tanks. She has been at the forefront of research coordination, specializing in public policy areas crucial to achieving macroeconomic stability. Maria has expertise in monetary and fiscal policy, as well as policy concerning the financial sector, with an academic background in public policy and finance. Also, Maria's knowledge is complemented by her extensive previous experience as a financial analyst in international financial markets. Maria, welcome to our panel. And our next panelist is Dr. Valeriia Palii. Valeriia has a PhD degree in clinical psychology. She is a president of National Psychological Association of Ukraine. She has been working as a clinical psychologist in a private practice. She lectures for universities and private companies, and also has an experience in research activities and project management in the field of mental health. Since 2022, together with her colleagues, she has been running the psychological support hotline for Ukrainians, which operates for free in Ukraine and also in 21 European countries. And our last panelist is Nataliia Shapoval. Nataliia is a vice president for the policy research at Kyiv School of Economics. She has experience in managing and conducting policy research and consulting projects in public procurement, healthcare, and pharmaceutical industry, as well as strategic development of the private sector. Nataliia advised on several governmental strategies, including economic, regional development and investments. And since the war started, Nataliia and her team were focusing on providing direct research-based analytical support on sanctions, damages, food security, and also recovery issues. Before we start our discussion, we have a very special video message prepared by one of the key female leaders in the government of Ukraine, Valeriia, the Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Lauren, please video.
My name is Valeriia and I'm Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Ministry of Digital Transformation is the newest ministry in the Ukrainian government. We're only 3 years old. And we are building the most convenient digital state in the world without corruption, without bureaucracy, absolutely paperless and open and available for everyone. We believe the less government people have in their lives, the better, because it's absolutely nonsense to in this turbulent world when the life and time is so precious to still stay in queues for hours in order to receive a public service. We have created an ecosystem of digital projects which is called DIA, translated into English as an action. The DIA ecosystem has 5 different projects. The first and the most important product, our core application DIA, which is used by 19 million of Ukrainians. By the way, Ukraine is the first country in the world where digital passports are totally equivalent to paper or plastic ones. Also, Ukraine has been called a European digital transformation tiger. So speaking about DIA application, now DIA app has 3 main components: digital documents in smartphone, digital services in smartphone, and digital signature. So basically, Ukrainians can use DIA in different use cases. We have 14 digital documents, including passport, international passport, driving license, childbirth certificate, and many others, as well as we pay fines, we pay taxes through DIA, we have the opportunity to do e-polls through DIA. Another project of the ecosystem is a state portal of public services DIA, where we are digitizing all of the services. More than 120 services, including the fastest business registration in the world. So you can register your business in Ukraine only in 10 minutes. The third project is DIA City, which is a special economic and tax regime for IT companies and which helps Ukraine to sustain and to develop digital economy even during the times of war. We have 500 residents of DIA City, including international companies such as Visa and Revolut and others. DIA Education, a national edutainment platform for reskilling and digital literacy. This project started in 2019 as the national program on the development of digital literacy, because when you are building a digital state, it is important so all of the citizens have at least basic digital skills. The full-scale Russian invasion to Ukraine started last year on the 24th of February. Of course, we have faced a lot of new challenges. One of them is basically a lot of internally displaced people. Those people lost their jobs, lost their businesses, lost their homes, and they are trying to build everything from scratch. And thus, we see a pretty high level of unemployment. And with our project, with our program, we are trying to give them an opportunity to upskill or to reskill fast and to find a job in a completely new region for our citizens. So now the DIA education platform has more than 150 series, which by the way are also available in English. It has a function of interactive simulators, which help to test not only knowledge but also skills. It also has the reskilling section with more than 50 series. Half of the professions are digital, half of them are not. It also has the possibility to offer to our users a personalized learning trajectory and many other absolutely different functions. And the last but not the least, one of the DIA ecosystem projects is DIA Business, which is a national program on the development of SMEs and which has 2 components. The first one is the online one-stop shop for future and existing entrepreneurs with more than 70 different topics for free consultations, with impact investment platform, with marketplace of financial products, with expert sections. So you name it and you will find any information what you need if you're a Ukrainian citizen to start your business or to grow your business. And the second component of the DIA business platform is basically the offline network of centers of support for entrepreneurs, which are located in 13 cities in Ukraine and 1 center in Warsaw, which was opened last year. Supporting women entrepreneurs has always been one of the priority areas of our work. It becomes even more important now due to the war, when such a big responsibility as the country's economic support has appeared on the shoulders of Ukrainian women. Just realize, in 2023, every second new individual entrepreneur in Ukraine is a woman. Almost 37,000 individual entrepreneurs have been registered since the beginning of this year, and 51% of which were founded by women. Thus, together with DIA Business Project and State Institution Entrepreneurship and Expert Promotion Office and other partners, we provide many different support programs for female entrepreneurship. For instance, the Dream and Achieve educational program for Ukrainian IDPs in Poland and Ukraine was launched by Impact Force and UN Women. Also, a program for SMEs recovery for women from Kyiv and Chernihiv regions. She's Next platform for women's digital community by Visa, grants for SMEs, women's and family enterprises, and opportunity to visit international exhibitions, and others. In March, we also launched the Visionary Women's Accelerator Vidvazhna, or Courageous. The project has become a robust, inclusive community for partnerships and networking. Huge responsibility lies on our women for their families and children, for their businesses, for their self-development, and many others. Building a business or obtaining new skills and professions in such conditions requires extraordinary skills, courage, and we know that our women have it. We at the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine support Ukrainian women and are open to international partnerships which can help and support our sensitive and at the same time brave part of the nation. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you. Thank you for this amazing video. And it's very important to say that perception of Ukrainian women in the world has changed a lot. And despite being underrepresented in both national and local government, Ukrainian women have emerged as prominent advocates of their country. Ukrainian women have risen to the challenge of representing Ukraine around the world as unofficial ambassadors. The women of Ukraine play a vital role in protecting their country and shaping its future. And more than 40,000 women serve in the Ukrainian army right now. Tens of thousands more do their part to help the country as journalists, volunteers, scientists, teachers, politicians, artists. Women who left abroad actively volunteer, organize actions and events in support of our country. And I would like to invite Maria to tell us more about outstanding Ukrainian women and their role in addressing the current challenges in Ukraine. But before that, just a brief remark to our audience. Please feel free to write down your questions during our presentations, and we will be happy to answer all your questions in the end of our session. Maria, please.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Thank you for being able to tell the audience, which is different from our usual audience, about what Ukrainian women and actually men are doing at this moment. What is going on is Ukraine is fighting a really uphill battle against an enemy that is much larger and really more powerful. If we compare Ukraine and Russia in terms of GDP, Ukraine had a GDP of $200 billion in 2021, while Russia had $1.8 trillion. That's a difference of 9 times in size. The war deepened this difference 14 times. So you can imagine that this battle is really hard for us. However, we are not alone in this struggle, and we are really grateful to all of the partners, to all of the international companies, organizations, and just people for their support. It's unbelievable, and we are happy that your hearts are with Ukraine. We also admire and glorify our men who are now fighting in the battlefield to protect us, to protect all of those who remain behind the front lines. But equally, we admire our women. Some of them are fighting, some of them are doing really great job in representing our country abroad, or doing really valuable things, being volunteers. And now, just using this opportunity, I want to show you some of their faces, because I think that there are some faces which I choose for this presentation, but there are really hundreds and thousands of the others who are not less important. So the first one is Ptashka. This is the girl, she's 21. She was a combat medic, paramedic at Azovstal, and she was fighting for this plant in Mariupol, and she was captured to sent to Russian prison. Now she was freed, and she advocates for Ukraine at all levels. The girl was a singer in her peace life, and her song at Azovstal, it really touched the hearts of a lot of people. Next slide, please. Irina Guk, this is the other lady. She is not a medic, but she's a volunteer. She's a manager of Laleka Foundation. Every time a Center for Economic Strategy, the organization I work for, is doing some presentation or a meeting or some webinar, we ask everyone to donate to the cause of Laleka Foundation. This lady collects medical supplies and packs them into medical backpacks for tactical medicine, so that people are able to save lives of soldiers in the front lines. Next slide, please. Alexandra Matvichuk, Lesia, Center for Civil Liberties. She won last year the Nobel Prize for Peace. She was collecting evidence of Russian atrocities in Ukraine, and listening to her speech as a Nobel laureate, it was really heartbreaking, and she represented Ukraine at a very high international level. Next slide, please. The other lady, Oksana Markarova, she is Ukrainian ambassador to the United States of America, and what she is doing in advocating for aid to Ukraine, both in terms of financial aid and military support, and also the United States support to Ukraine internationally and politically. This is all invaluable, and this is also one of Ukrainian ladies which I admire. Next slide, please. And this is the last person which I wanted to show you. This is a Ukrainian writer. Her name is Victoria Melina. Her name was Victoria Melina. She's a volunteer. She was a volunteer. She was a civic activist and a war crime researcher. The story behind this slide is that she uncovered the war diary of her fellow Ukrainian writer Volodymyr Vakulenko. He was killed, and he hid his wartime diary in the occupied territories under the cherry tree, and she came to his house and came to his garden, and she uncovered this diary and was trying to publish that, and she actually succeeded, and she succeeded in so many advocacy activities, and she was a good writer. She was killed by Russian missile just months ago in Kramatorsk in a pizzeria doing just her peaceful arrangements. So we don't have her with us anymore, and this is what could happen to any Ukrainian woman or man nowadays in Ukraine. In the next slide, I put one of her poems. I don't think that I will read them. I won't read it aloud, but you can read it by yourself, I guess. So, however brave the defenders might be, or however strong the women might be in the face of the war, Ukrainian population, and particularly the most vulnerable people, women, children, elderly, they are suffering immensely, and the war has given rise to two new groups of vulnerable population, of vulnerable individuals in Ukraine. This is internal refugees. We, as political analysts, call them internally displaced population, IDPs, and this is also war veterans. Being a part of the ABT family, we and the grantees of the ABT, we researched and did policy consulting for the policies oriented into helping the government to produce like smart policies for support of the internally displaced people. And probably this is the example that I would like to share with you, because there are a lot of countries where conflicts or natural disasters force people out of their houses. That is why this experience, when like almost 1/3 of Ukraine's population was displaced, it might be handy. And I will stop on that in more details. So. Globally, there are already over 100 million people that have been forced to move, and half of them has been forced to move because of wars. On average, average refugee remains displaced for 20 years. That's a stunning number. Syria, Ukraine, Colombia, these are the countries with the biggest number of displaced population. In Ukraine, the war began in 2014. It began from Crimea annexation and Donbas conflict, and then the IDPs appeared in our vocabulary. The word appeared in our vocabulary, and displaced people appeared in the streets of our cities. The full-scale invasion, of course, rapidly increased their numbers. It was 1.5 million people in February 2022. Now it is 5 to 6 million people as of the beginning of 2023. Approximately half of the IDPs are women, and a quarter of them are children. Only 5% of these people can physically go back home. The others, either they don't have a home anymore, or their home country or their hometowns, their home cities are occupied by the enemy. But approximately 3/4 of them do want to come back, to return to where they were living. We hope very much that that will become true. So we were researching at Center for Economic Strategy the general IDP situation, and we're trying to assess the potential budgetary spending that are necessary to meet their needs. Unfortunately, we found out that the information is insufficient about the number of these people, their place of living, the living conditions, needs, and demands. And this information is really insufficient to do a well-informed policy decisions. So our first recommendation was, of course, collecting more information about them. However, some needs we did identify, and some policies were developed by our government or by some advisories and implemented as well, and now I'm going to share it with you. So first, immediate needs, and here Ukraine, I guess, succeeded because it was really fast to organize, for example, evacuation trains free of charge from the areas which were affected by the war. And due to the large state-owned railway network and its operator, Ukrainian Railways, it was possible for a lot of women and children just get out from danger and find themselves in a safer place. The evacuation trains were free of charge, they were accessible, and usually they were run without delays, even under the war conditions. Volunteers in Ukrainian cities were meeting people just in the train stations and supplying them with first necessity items, first using their own resources. Then, of course, a lot of international help started to come to Ukraine, and the donors were covering a lot of these people's needs. Some humanitarian organizations were very active on that. The government unconditionally provided to everyone one-off financial support, so that the people, if they don't have any money taken with them, they have access to immediate financing. Digital and administrative services. This is the second need of the IDPs, which I want to talk about, and already presented today was the DIA app, the application which is called DIA. This was a huge aid to people who found themselves without any documents, for example. They were able to register as IDPs using DIA, and they don't have to go anywhere to stay in the lines, and they are eligible for the social benefits regardless. It's also simplified the work for local administrative personnel, which would otherwise be really like overwhelmed in the Western cities, where there was a huge flow of the internally displaced people, and they would otherwise just not do it. So people got necessary documents, and people got therefore financial support under these documents much faster and much more efficient. What else? The information and registration for the financial help from the international organizations, namely UN, it is being conducted via a special portal in internet. This is also very good because it not only allowed to coordinate help and avoid double funding, but also gave the vulnerable people easy and really straightforward access to much needed resources. They still don't have a full information about their rights, about opportunities available, and there is a room for intervention and for improvement here to organize some big portal and collect feedback and collect the information. But I guess that here the digitalization played really a vital and important role. The third need, and probably one of the most important, is housing. In Ukraine, normally, I don't know how about the other countries, but in Ukraine, 90% of people statistically were living in the apartments or houses that they owned in their own flats or houses, homes. From the IDPs, 60% now are renting the houses, so they didn't buy new homes, they are renting. They are getting a special governmental funding for that rent. It is linked to the situation in their home area. It's not means tested, it is not limited in time, it doesn't have any conditions, but the one your hometown should be under the occupation, or it should be damaged really severely, then you are eligible for this help. It costs the budget approximately $1.5 billion annually. And this aid, it's not really generous, it's approximately $80 per month, but it is provided to 2 million people. The numbers here are huge. Also, the housing benefits include the people who hosted the IDPs. They were eligible for a small financial support, which covers communal utility payments. So, and the IDPs itself, they are also eligible for communal utility payments benefits for this coverage. Surprisingly, the module houses program, which was a really popular topic at the beginning of the invasion, and a lot of international support groups were trying to build these model houses to create temporary living places for the IDPs. It was not really successful. And proved to be a really limited solution. In January 2023, only 6,000 people out of 6 million IDPs were living in such housing. The others either rented flats or they keep living in the social premises like schools or kindergartens or some other administrative buildings that were provided by the local authorities. Financial support, that's the other need of the IDPs. They need money, of course, as we all do. So approximately 1/3 of the IDPs rely on salary as their primary income source. For another 20%, it's government's pension. So they are elder people and they receive pension from government. About 1/4 of the IDPs, they rely on financial aid from state and from donors as the primary source of their income. So they are really living from this financial aid. It allows them to pay rent. It allows them to look for the other options to sustain themselves and sustain their families. It's interesting that not only a special housing payment, the rent payment is available to the IDPs, but they can also use all the other Ukrainian governmental programs which are available to any citizen in our country. It includes like all the social security, like governmental pensions, social support for the poorest, childcare support, unemployment benefits, and so on and so forth. So in this sense, every internally displaced person receives what the other guys can have. From the other needs of the IDPs is jobs. So this is underexplored, and this policy, I guess, needs to be addressed more efficiently to provide more options for the IDPs to integrate into communities. The government has to stimulate their employment. Integration and the further status of the IDPs is one of the also most complicated things, because normally the design of this policy should include the design of the point at which the person stops to be the internally displaced person, but starts to, be just a regular citizen. And this is the dialogue which is far from completion, because for example, you can rely on such criteria as safety, free movement, adequate living conditions, employment, sustaining livelihood, having housing, having property, having legal security, like a reinstatement of the last document or so, or participation in the civic life of the community. But all these criteria, they are pretty vague, and now the dialogue is going on. So should the status be linked to any of them or to all of them simultaneously? So this is the work in progress. And what I can say in conclusion, and what's important to say, is that the best way to support the IDPs, to support those who lost their homes to the invasion of Russians to Ukraine, is to free their home cities, is to free their towns so that they can come back home. And no more people remain homeless, and no more people are wandering, desperately looking for shelter for them, for the kids. And to do this, Ukraine needs support, Ukraine needs weapons, and on the long run, Ukraine needs a NATO membership. That's the only way for us to ensure that that we're living safely, and that no Ukrainian will find itself in the forced displacement condition. I would like to express my appreciation to all of you who gathered here today to listen to our presentation, and I hope that we will have a productive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Dear audience, I would like to remind you that please feel free to write down your questions during the presentation of our panelists. And in case you do not see the Q&A option in your Zoom, please refresh your feed, and this Q&A option will appear. And well, our next topic we would like to talk about is work of Ukrainian psychologists during the war and gender differences in mental health issues. And I would like to give the floor to Valeriia. Valeriia, please.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Greetings. It's a big pleasure for me to be with you today and tell you a little bit about our work. But first, next slide, please. But first, I want to tell you a little about the National Psychological Association of Ukraine. We are a young professional association founded in 2017. And before that, there were many different small organizations in Ukraine that united psychologists according to different methods or areas of work. We became the first big association that simply united psychologists. And we started with 200 people. Now more than 1,800 members are with us. The NPA represents Ukraine in European Federation of Psychologists Association. We closely work with the American Psychological Association, and we are members in Global Psychology Alliance. I became a president of our association in 2020. Next slide, please. And then I was 33 years old, and many of my colleagues say that a woman too young to become a president. And you know, it's very personal for me, and every day I fight this stereotype. And in 2020, I wanted to continue moving towards achieving our strategic goals such as developing mental health legislation in Ukraine, delivering best European and international standards in Ukrainian psychology, and of course, develop my personal topic about connection, mental health, and climate change. But it seems that universe had its own plans, and COVID-19 and then Russian invasion of Ukraine. Next slide, please. During this war, we experienced a lot of pain. Ukrainians, among whom many of my colleagues lost their relatives and homes, they were under occupation, and their lives changed radically. Every day, we as citizens and as psychologists, we witness terrible events that affect our physical and mental health. Next slide, please. Our family and friends protect us by risking their lives every day in army. We live in complete uncertainty, and we need to manage our own lives and do our own professional duties. About 75% of Ukrainian psychologists are women, and we all combine different roles in our life. We are mothers, we are wives and partners, we are daughters, and of course, we are professionals. Next slide. The biggest challenge for us is that we have to save ourselves in order to help others, and a significant burden of responsibility and hard work fell on Ukrainian psychologists. And being in difficult conditions, most of the Ukrainian psychologists continue to work. And our goal as the goal of professional community, the biggest professional association, to support our colleagues. Next slide. From the first days of the full-scale invasion, the National Psychological Association began to do everything to support each of our members. Together with our friends and colleagues from other countries, we started conducted lectures, trainings, and courses on currently relevant topics about trauma or crisis counseling and so on. All events with international psychologists are translated into Ukrainian and are free for our members. And more than 6,000 psychologists have undergone various trainings from the NPA over the past year. We pay special attention to supervisory support of colleagues, peer-to-peer groups, and mentoring, and all of this is also free help for those colleagues who need it. We advocate on behalf of the interests of our country at the international level of professional communities. It is important for us to talk about Ukraine in every field, both scientific and practical. Our colleagues in Ukraine appreciate proactive international position of our association in working with foreign partners and see the merits of it. We intensified our work with the government and ministries, and the more and more of our members are involved in various important projects that bring our victory closer and speed up the recovery of our citizens. We closely work with the Ministry of Health, with the Ministry of Veteran Affairs. We support the mental health initiative provided by the First Lady. We help colleagues with finding jobs because we know that many of them have lost their homes and need money. We support those who find themselves abroad, build bridges with partnership associations in neighboring countries, which in turn support our Ukrainian colleagues in their countries, and help them with the process of professional legalization and finding employment. We did lots of great stuff for our psychologists, but what about population? As I mentioned before, and I think that it's obvious that war affected our mental health. Next slide, please. According to the data provided by the First Lady Mental Health Initiative, 90% of Ukrainians have at least one of the symptoms of anxiety disorder, and more than 50% are at risk of developing difficulties related to mental health. Almost half of our citizens will need psychological help and psychosocial support. So we need a very high demand, and we need to offer a concrete decision for our society. Next slide, please. And to support our citizens, we have created an important initiative that probably is unique in the world. In June 2022, the National Psychological Association of Ukraine launched a hotline of free psychological help for fellow citizens, which work both within Ukraine as well as 21 countries. It's a unique initiative because we cover other countries, but it's not unique hotline in Ukraine. It's important to say. Next slide, please. On this initiative, we received different types of support. Financial support from the UNDP in Ukraine, European Union in Ukraine, and Embassy of Denmark and Canada in Ukraine. We also got a technical support from AWC and Deloitte companies, and training support from the American Psychological Association and Portuguese Psychological Association. Next slide, please. The hotline is provided in the format of audio and video calls and operates from 10 a.m. till 8 p.m. every day. All calls are free. In order to receive a video consultation with a psychologist, client needs to notify the administrator, and she or he will switch the application to video conferences. Psychologists of the line are specially educated specialists who are trained in provided crisis interventions, trauma-informed approach, topics of violence. All consultations are confidential. If necessary, our psychologists can refer people to other specialists. Since May 2023, our team has been strengthened by psychiatrists who conduct online consultations also. We also offer participation in free online psychological client groups. The group topics are recovery after violence, refugee needs, children's support, etc. There are 20 psychologists, 2 psychiatrists, 2 psychologist supervisors, and 3 psychologist administrators who work with us. And since June 2022, we provided 5,462 crisis consultations. Next slide, please. Most of our clients are women, and among our clients are internally displaced persons, wives and relatives of military staff, and refugees. Most often, middle-aged Ukrainians turn to us, but there is also a very large percentage of elderly. Often these are people who live in areas of active hostilities and cannot or don't want to leave. Next slide, please. And I mentioned that we accept calls from other countries. A third of calls come abroad, and almost all of foreign calls are from women. According to the martial law, not all men can leave our country, and that's why we have a very big women refugee communities in different countries. And unfortunately, it's not always possible for our women in different countries to receive mental health support because some of them are living in rural area. Some of them have problems with the language and have language barrier, and some of them in some countries there are different specificities in different procedures. So therefore, we help our people, support them, and we also offload mental health services in other countries. Next slide, please. What are the most common requests we receive? I have prepared just top 8. The first one is stress response. Our psychologists have deal with acute stress and PTSD. We also have many requests about family problems because many of our people currently live in extended families, and for some of our people it's a little bit challenging. We also have different requests related to relationship problems, different quarrels and conflicts with colleagues, friends, partners, and so on. Symptoms of mental health disorders, chronic and acute, increased anxiety, depression, psychotic symptoms, forced change of residence, and all complaints about that, loss of income and place of residence, unfortunately bereavement, and child education. The last one is very interesting, and we really receive many questions from women who are internally displaced or who live in other countries, and they need more tips and more answers how they can help their children to adjust to new community, to new school, to new friends, and to new reality. To summarize, I want to say that Ukrainian psychologists work effectively, and as professional association, we try to support them and empower them with evidence-based knowledge and concrete tools how they can help other people. And at the same time, we have enough resource to support our citizens and provide high quality mental health services. Thank you very much. Thank you for opportunity to speak for you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Valeriia. I would like to remind one more time to our audience that if you want to ask any questions, please write them down in the chat. In case you don't see it, please refresh the feed and this Q&A option will appear. And our last topic for tonight is very complex and complicated issue, and I would like to invite Nataliia to tell us about the consequences of the war in Ukraine, results of damage assessment conducted by Nataliia's team, and the role of female Ukrainian leaders in the process of ongoing recovery in Ukraine. Nataliia, please.
Yes, thank you, Nadia. Good evening, good day to everyone. I'm honored to have a chance to talk to you. I understand that not just Ukrainians are suffering right now from the war, and many of the people, you know, in very distant places are suffering from it too because of the high prices and the shortages of food. So we're all kind of in one boat right now, whereas Ukraine cannot supply enough grain to the markets because of the Russian blockade of our ports, and many countries in the African continent, for example, might not be, like in the poor community, might not be getting enough food supplies because of this. So this is really unfortunate, and the only way to end it is actually for Ukraine to win the war. The damage to the war, and you've heard a lot from my colleagues before that, is huge. I will give you indeed some numbers that are generated by Women-led project. So when the war started, me and my colleagues started assessing what is the damage of the Russian war on the infrastructure of Ukraine, with the goal to make Russia pay. That was that easy. And since then, we are doing these estimates. As of now, the damage is almost $150 billion. This is huge. For US, it might sound like a few buildings, but for Ukraine, it's a huge amount of destruction. For the largest category of destruction, surprisingly, is housing. So more than 150,000 of houses are destroyed. More than 3,200 of educational facilities are destroyed. Almost 1,000 of hospitals. So this is just to show you what actually Russia is targeting. We did this project with my team, and a lot of policymakers in Ukraine are also engaged in it, and they are also females. Like our Minister of Economy, Yulia Svyridenko, she kind of gave us a hint at the beginning of war to work on this. And right now, for example, she's in charge of assessing of the dam destruction by Russia. So they destroyed our big hydroelectric plant. This is like enormous. There are not so many of such constructions in the world. And Yulia is leading the assessment of this, and of course doing a lot of other policies. Another person who is also female, who is also working on making Russia pay, is Alexandra Zarhina. She's our she works in the Ministry of Infrastructure and Recovery, and she's one of the people responsible for the actual register based on which Russia gonna be compensating to Ukraine, and for many other like wonderful recovery projects. And in my team, surprisingly, it was also a team of merely women who led this, but also a lot of men. It's now a national project. More than 17 organizations work on it. But there are other kinds of efforts that I want to share with you, led by women. For example, one of top 5 biggest charitable foundation, which is at KC, is led also by women. Svetlana Denisenko, this is like a 25-year-old girl who started fundraising for the vests and helmets for the males when the war started, for the territorial defense. And right now, this foundation is $60 million of projects. So I'm like impressed by my colleague, and I want to share it with you. So they supplied like a huge proportion of all the medical kits for the country through this foundation. Another story is in another fund who are training drone operators. It's run by Maria Berlinska and Lyubov Shipovich. So Maria is a veteran of this force since 2014, basically. And since then, she and her team trained more than 25,000 drone operators. This is huge because right now, a lot in the battlefield is decided by drones, not purely by, heavy weapons. To proceed, I just want to say that another part of the warfare is sanctions. So unfortunately, Russia is really a huge player, and they have a lot of financing to fund the war. They get like last year, they got $326 billion from exports of oil and gas, which is like more than Ukrainian GDP. Like this is a huge amount, and they have all this money to finance the war. Therefore, it's impossible right now to lead the war without sanctions, but they are really designed in a way that is smart and doesn't hurt other countries. And this team on sanctions in Ukraine is also led by many women, including our Vice Prime Minister Yulia Svyridenko, whom I mentioned, but also in my team at Kyiv School of Economics, we have a group of women who are working on this sanctions design. and globally as well, a lot of women who are helping with this. Russians frequently manipulate that sanctions are hurting, for example, grain supplies or something. This is not true. Sanctions do not cover any food, humanitarian products. They actually cover a very small proportion of trade. In addition to oil, it's just metals and some dual-use goods. So it's not such a big and such a critical category of good. They also don't target fertilizers or anything which is used for supply or production of agricultural products or food. And why the prices sometimes are going up for fertilizers, it's purely because Russians are cutting the gas supplies to Europe, to other countries, and they solely are responsible for like reduced supply of gas and then for higher prices. So this is purely their manipulation, and sanctions are only targeting to make sure that they have less weapon and less money to buy weapon. Ukraine has a good plan how to win the war and how to end the suffering from Ukrainians, but also people around the world who are have these issues because of the global markets and because of the food supplies. And the formula is exactly, we need weapons from our partners and financial support from our partners to kick Russians out from the territory of Ukraine. And we need to international law and justice to be restored, and people in Ukraine to get compensation for violation of the human rights and for their private property destroyed. We talked, it's really huge. So this is easy. We just want what is our back, and we want international law to protect people for the future. So Ukraine has, because it's such a big country, it has a precedent to build a better rules in compensations, in international security, in practices in NATO by our example. And in fact, for this, we need a lot of support from people globally on the arena of United Nations and in all kind of communities to win. Russian and some of their people, they're using this appeasement, let's make peace. And I just want to tell you that it cannot work. And as Maria told about the human rights activist Matvichuk, she has other colleagues who are also females who are collecting the war crimes. And our prosecutor general office is collecting war crimes. And from different sources, we only have recorded war crimes for 80,000 of cases. These are only recorded one. We don't know what's happening on the occupied territories to such an extent. So this is huge. And when we come to deoccupied territories, people say that no, every territory should be deoccupied, because they know that Russians, when they come, they bring torture, they bring filtration camp, they take Ukrainian children and bring them to Russia. And this is massive violation of human rights that is going on. So this appeasement, it doesn't exist. It's just cannot work on Russian terms. The peace can, and for this we need the international law to be restored. Thank you very much, and I really believe that female movement will help us this on the international arena the same way as we are helping inside of Ukraine, as Maria, Valeriia, and Valeriia were presenting to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nataliia. Thank you, everyone, for this interesting and very complex presentation. Dear audience, we are slowly moving to the last part of our session, and our speakers will be extremely happy to answer any questions from the audience. So please feel free to write down your questions during during our session. And I would like to ask our technical facilitator to show me the questions from the audience. I think I will just pick up some of the questions and I will nominate our speakers because the questions are really very specific. Yeah, the first question is to Maria. The question is, what are the most vulnerable female groups in Ukraine right now, and what is the government's policy towards them?
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. I would say there are several of them, right? And they all belong to the wider vulnerable groups. So first, I would probably talk about war veterans. Mostly, we have our men who are fighting, right? So that's statistically, that's how the situation is, and that's what we really appreciate and admire them for. But there are also women who are fighting, and women are also war veterans, and women are also wounded, and sometimes they are having like these wounds in a way that prevents them from coming back to the normal life. So I guess this group is the most vulnerable now. They need medical aid, they need psychological aid, and they need, of course, the help in reintegration into the society, and they need help into, you know, coming back to the life as it was or as it will be after, I hope, Ukraine's victory. So this is probably the first group that I will talk about, and these are the ladies that we all like are really grateful to, as well as the men who also lost a lot during this war. That like people are losing, I don't know, legs, arms, psychological health, and everything just because of Russia's invasion. Okay, the second group is, of course, those internally displaced women who have children. For them, it's more difficult to integrate into local communities because they can't start looking for a job normally if the community where they live does not have a bomb shelter at school, which is actually pretty often it happens in kindergartens and at schools. There are no bomb shelters. That's why kids cannot go to school physically, and they are forced to do the schoolwork from home and to take lessons from home. COVID helped us a lot in these terms because we adopted, we already know what's online education, and that's great. But mothers with young children, they cannot go to work. So this is probably the second very vulnerable group of women. And also we can talk about men who has children, and if they are raising these children alone, for example, this is also the same group. Parents with young children who cannot work because of war. The other also, like, it's heartbreaking, but a lot of Ukrainian women of the older age, they are staying at their homes in the occupied territory and in the territory where the active actions are now going on, just because they have nowhere to go, just because they have no husbands who died in younger age, like it happens in Ukraine. Men are living a lot less than women are. So we have these lonely grandmothers who opted to stay where there is a constant shelling, where there is no medical aid, where nobody would choose to leave if they have other options. So they have a pressing need in humanitarian aid, and we would love very much if the Red Cross or the UN or some other organizations could work in the occupied territories to help them, because Ukrainian volunteers, for example, as it was in Kherson, they could not do it. They don't have access, even if they want to. They just got shot. So that's my call to international organizations to help those elderly and not really healthy women and men as well, who are left in the occupied territories or who are left in danger, who has nowhere to go.
So
Nadia.
unfortunately, it looks like Nadia has lost her connection. Give me one moment. I'm going to see if she has another question to ask. So sorry. Thank you everyone for their patience. We're all joining from different spots. So it does look like she has a question that I can ask on her behalf. Her question is, how many psychologists are in Ukraine? Is a typical Ukrainian psychologist female or male, and why? And that's for Valeriia.
Okay, I got it. About 10,000 of psychologists currently work in Ukraine as practical psychologists. But we have more psychologists, but not of them work by profession. 75% of our Ukrainian psychologists are women. And I think that, that this fact is connected to some stereotypes about women sensitive or some empathic features. But due to our observation, more and more men become psychologists now. So I think that we very soon we can have an exhaust number. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Valeriia. And next question is for Nataliia. The question is, what are the key principles of the recovery process right now in Ukraine, and why, in your opinion, it is important to involve women?
Thank you, Nadia. This is a very important question, and we work on this with Maria and Nadia ABT team. Yeah, the general principle is like build back better, but this is a big concept, and of course, in the long-term recovery, there should be all the principles that are globally accepted right now of the climate neutral, gender sensitive, and inclusive recovery. And in practice, basically, success of Ukrainian recovery gonna depend on what Maria Repko was describing, whether Ukrainian women gonna get back and whether they will enrich our labor force, because otherwise it would be very difficult for economy to recover. So all policymakers are interested, you know, in how to make it attractive for Ukrainian women with children to get back and to have education for their kids and workplaces for them. So this is a big policy question, and the elephant in the room was the recovery. But there is a smaller recovery, so we cannot, you know, just wait until the end of the war, because some of the occupied territories that were deoccupied recently, they suffered really huge damages, and there is no way just leave them alone. So this recovery of housing for people, of some basic needs, utilities, like water, heating, it should go on every day. And so the major criteria here for this recovery is the need. So basically, wherever the territories, communities are needing most, that would be the first priority. So thank you, Nadia.
Thank you, Nataliia. And I think we will take one more question, because unfortunately we're already running out of time. And the last question is to Maria. What, in your opinion, is the role of women in policymaking in Ukraine?
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. I just I have one thought, and I just want to follow up on the previous question a little bit. I was telling about women who couldn't go and start looking for a job because they have kids. And here I want to make a small promo for Shapoval, for Nataliia Shapoval's Kyiv School of Economics initiative, and also for the digitalization in Ukraine. In my banking application, I can donate to the cause of the Kyiv School of Economics, who rebuilt the shelters, the bomb shelters in schools, so that kids can go to school and women can go to work. And this is huge, and I admire everyone who is doing that, and that's good. In policy making. In policy making, Ukraine is a pretty traditional country where usually and normally policy was made by men, like pretty much the Soviet legacy, but now a lot of women appeared, and Nataliia already mentioned and our economic minister is a lady, our deputy minister for recovery is lady Alexandra, Mrs. Arhina, and we have a lot of women now working in the ministries and in the other spheres. They are sometimes they are they are heads of the offices, sometimes they are deputy heads of the offices, but I could not say that women are overlooked. No, I would say that they are taking the leadership, and in the international arena, actually things changed with this imposition of the prohibition for Ukrainian men to leave the country. It's now much harder, and that is why the like ambassadors, I don't mean official ambassadors here, but I mean those who are traveling abroad to present Ukraine, to advocate Ukraine's cause, to go to some meetings, to go to some parliamentary hearings or the other international delegations. They are now mostly consist of women, and Ukrainian women became more visible in international arena as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, audience, for all the questions. Unfortunately, we already running out of time, but you can see all the context of our speakers on the screen, and please do not hesitate to contact them if you have more questions. Thank you so much for this amazing evening, for this very complex and interesting presentations. Thank you, Kigali. It was a great pleasure, and sending our greetings from Ukraine. Good night.